Long before humans invented Wi-Fi, Texas, or the concept of we'll fix it in the next update, they were already busy solving the real problems. How to move 40-ton rocks for absolutely no reason. Somewhere between surviving mammoths and discovering fire, ancient people looked at the perfectly normal landscape and said, this needs a giant mysterious stone for vibes. And probably like that, Neolithic architecture was born, the world's first unpaid group project with zero documentation and maximum confusion for future generations. No blueprints, no cranes, no safety regulations, just pure determination and questionable decision making at scale. Across continents, different civilizations somehow synchronized on the same idea, build something enormous, explain nothing, and leave. Archaeologists today are still staring at these structures like they are pop quiz set by time itself, and honestly, the stones are winning. Somewhere in the vast silence of the Eurasian steppe, the Altai and Siberian monoliths stand. They are humanity's earliest example of saying this is important, no further explanation will be provided. Good luck. And just like that, modern archaeology gained a permanent migraine because dating them a historian's cooperative nightmare. Carbon dating? It's stone, not bread. Written records? They did not leave a dear archaeologist note. Context? Step Wind has rearranged the evidence like a very confident minimalist interior designer. So instead, researchers rely only on nearby burial mounds, tool fragments, stylistic comparison vibes, scientific turn topology, and somehow conclude probably somewhere between 3000 2000 BC. And don't ask us again. The tallest of the Siberian monoliths stand at 5.5 meters. They have no name, no precise location, and not even a polite heritage label on Google Maps. They are only tentatively assigned to the Bronze Age thanks to nearby burials. Archaeologists' version of it was probably around then, give or take a few centuries. Beyond that, nothing is known about these monoliths. Scattered out in the absolute middle of nowhere, so nobody really knows whether the people buried there were actually locals, or if they simply marched across half of Siberia, reached the rocks completely exhausted, and immediately died for the vibe. I've never been there either, though the monoliths have always fascinated and enchanted me. It might safely from a distance like a very expensive hobby I wisely choose not to start. So, with all my love to archaeology, ancient civilizations, and monoliths, I couldn't miss the chance to visit the actual tallest monolith in the world, the Rudston Monolith. Standing there at over 7 meters tall and 4 meters deep underground, it feels less like a stone and more like a Britain's earliest passive aggressive statement. Yes, I have been here, science prehistory. No, I will not explain myself. You approach expecting answers about Neolithic wisdom, but instead you get pure vertical confidence and absolutely zero context, which is arguably the most British thing ever carved from stone. Meanwhile, the monolith just stands there, quietly outperforming every modern sculpture by doing literally nothing except existing longer than anything else around it. I left deeply impressed, slightly confused, and emotionally humbled, which I assume is exactly the intended visitor experience. In the end, Rudston Monolith doesn't tell you its story, it simply reminds you that time is real, explanations are optional, and some stones have been winning the staring contest with humanity since before staring was invented. So, how old is Rudston Monolith? Geologically, the sandstone in Britain itself formed approximately 250 million years ago, and it's pretty possible that no one actually moved it 30 miles from the stone bearing deposit. Here we must understand that many stones were transported over vast distances during the Great Melt, when the ice sheet was more than half a mile thick, melted unevenly, and had the power of a bulldozer. Even if the stone was found lying here after being dragged from the quarry by glaciers, the real question remains who stood it up and when. Historians can date the Rudston monolith by the human remains found around it. It's basically the archaeological version of common sense. If you discover an iPhone, an iPad, and a Starbucks cup in the same layer of soil, you can safely assume they belong to roughly the same era. But if you were to find those very items buried next to the Great Pyramid of Giza, that wouldn't mean the pyramid was built in the 21st century. We somehow understand that the objects would be separated by a lot. So, can the Neolithic burials near the Rudston Monolith be confidently tied to the monolith itself? Maybe yes, or maybe no more than the nearby church or Christian graves. What if it was standing even before the Ice Age? But after 800,000 years of icy Britain, it would almost certainly have adopted a far more relaxed horizontal lifestyle, which means its vertical ambitions must date from after the 12,000 years ago mark. Let's keep in mind this number. The second proof that it's a Neolithic monolith is the evidence of stone circles and smaller monoliths nearby. But is that really proof? An evidence of stone circles is hardly proof that a 10-meter giant and those very modest little stones all belong to the same moment in time. Perhaps someone simply came along, saw one, and decided to start copying. Of course, anything is possible. Some may have put in it more effort, others less, but we can't treat this as undeniable proof. So, how did scientists calculate the age of the monoliths? Obviously, measuring the weathering and soil layers. And if you're already rubbing your hands together thinking, now this is the most precise method, that I'm afraid you are tragically mistaken. The error margin is not hundreds of years but potentially thousands. Take a monolith made of sandstone slowly being eaten away by rain, wind, frost, and pollution. Geologists examine how rounded its edges are, but what if those edges were deliberately rounded by humans or by ice during meltdown, or what if they were never sharp to begin with? How exactly are we supposed to calculate this mystical thing called roundness? Next comes surface pitting and cracking. Pitting and cracking sound like they should be a kind of stone clock, but in reality they're closer to estimating a car's mileage by how dusty it looks. The basic idea geologists use is intuitive. A stone exposed to the elements develops tiny pits, microfractures, and larger cracks over time. Rainwater dissolves minerals, frost expands inside pores, salt crystals grow and wedge things apart. Wind sends the surface, pollution accelerates chemical breakdown, so in principle more damage, more time exposed. The problem is that the relationship between damage and time is not stable, predictable, or universal. The cracking is often not gradual. It can be triggered by single events, a freeze-thaw cycle, an earthquake, a fire, or even a change in groundwater. One harsh winter can produce more visible cracking than 1,000 calm years. The timeline becomes punctured and irregular rather than continuous. Then human interference ruins the calibration even more. Polishing, carving, repairs, pollution, or simply moving the stone to a new environment can reset or accelerate surface weathering pattern. So what we are measuring might not be time since creation, but time since last disturbance. I don't want to upset you, but with all respect to historians who are trying their best in delivering information about monoliths, the bottom line is there is no universal scale that translates numbers of pits or cracks density into years. Okay, moving on. Then there are mineral decay patterns. Here we pause, hold our breath, and expect some deep scientific revelation, only to discover that nature once again refuses to keep neat little timestamps for us. Mineral decay patterns sounds like they should finally give us the truth serum of geology, but they don't, because minerals are not clocks. They are more like stubborn personalities reacting differently depending on mood, environment, and history. The core issue is that mineral decay is controlled by chemistry, and chemistry is extremely sensitive to conditions that are rarely stable over long periods. Yes, you heard that right, chemistry won't help us at all. First, the same mineral can decay at wildly different speeds, depending on temperature, moisture, acidity, oxygen levels, and biological activity. A feldspar grain in a damp acidic soil will break down quickly into clay minerals, while the same grain in a dry natural environment might remain almost unchanged for millennia. So the rate of aging is not fixed. Decay pathways are not linear. Minerals don't just wear down evenly, they transform. One mineral becomes another through chemical reactions like feldspar turning into kaolinite clay, but those reactions can pause, accelerate, or reverse depending on changing conditions. That makes it hard to map amount of decay to amount of time. The water is both the main agent of decay and the main source of chaos. Groundwater moves unpredictably, carrying dissolved ions in and out of the rock. That means a stone can be aging fast in one century and almost pause in the next, depending on hydrology. Final, and this is the big one, initial conditions are usually unknown. We rarely know exactly what the mineral composition looked like at the moment the stone was exposed. Without a clean starting point, decay becomes a comparison of unknown beginnings and variable processes, not a stopwatch. So, mineral decay patterns are useful for broad stories. This is ancient, this is younger, this has been altered, but they struggle to give precise dates because the system they depend on is constantly changing its rules mid game. Then why does a metal plaque exist at all? One calmly declaring the age of origin of the monolith, firmly bolted to its base like a verdict card in bureaucracy. Because historians cannot simply stand there and say we don't know when this was built, who built it, or how it was done. That kind of honesty would be professionally hazardous. It would quietly undermine their authority and immediately trigger a very inconvenient follow up wave of public curiosity. Ah, and what else in history are you uncertain about exactly? And then they would be forced into the most uncomfortable archaeological confession of all that, in fact, that there is a great deal they don't know, possibly quite a lot. So, could the Rudston Monolith really be the same age as Gobekli Tepe, which is about 11,000 years old? Sure, it could. Just it would simply mean that history has absolutely no idea who put it there. As you may already suspect, this idea didn't appear out of nowhere, and I didn't ask you to remember that 12,000 year mark for nothing. In the Urals, a discovery was made that managed to gently kick our entire understanding of prehistoric times and ancient humans right out of balance, like history itself tipping over an object it forgot it buried. The Shigir idol is the oldest known wooden sculpture in the world, carved from large wood and covered in mysterious geometric symbols and faces. It's basically a prehistoric message in a tree trunk that somehow survived thousands of years. The Shigir idol was found in the Ural Mountains region of Russia, specifically in a peat bog near modern-day Kirovograd. This matters a lot because peat bogs act like nature preservation chambers. No oxygen, acidic water, very slow decay. So instead of rotting away, the wood basically got pickled by nature for millennia. The idol was discovered in 1880s during gold mining operations at the Shigir peat bog. Workers were digging for gold, expecting treasures, and instead hid an ancient wooden giant staring back at them. It was originally found in fragments, not as a complete statue. Later, archaeologists reconstructed it into a tall carved figure. The idol stands at an impressive 5.5 meters, covered in abstract geometric carvings featuring stylized human like eight faces, yet not a single inscription, not even a polite made by someone somewhere a very long time ago. Based on this overwhelming clarity, scholars confidently dated it roughly 4,000 5,000 years old, much like burials nearby, since there is simply no evidence of some another people who may have lived on these lands earlier. But in 1997, historians finally decided to enjoy all the blessings of the technological progress and performed a radiocarbon analysis on a slice of the statue size of nail tip. What they discovered shocked everyone. The statue turned out to be twice as old, about 9,500 years, which already made it the oldest known wooden statue on Earth. But the story didn't end there. In 2014, historians from the local regional museum contacted their colleagues in Germany, and together they decided to repeat the experiment. For this, a fresh sample was taken from a cut section of the wood, and the statue was partially damaged in the process. Was it worth it? Absolutely, because radiocarbon analysis of the cut revealed a mind-boggling date of 12,500 years. So the date of 11,500 years ago was identified as the moment when someone started the carving process. That places it in the early Mesolithic period right after the Ice Age, meaning it predates the pyramids by thousands of years. It predates writing. It predates agriculture in most regions. It predates Gobekli Tepe, the oldest known temple. And yet it already has complex carving symbols and 8 human-like faces, so Shigir idol appears to look in all directions at once. No one fully agrees what the symbols mean. Mythology, cosmology, warning system, ancient abstract storytelling, or possibly the earliest known case of don't worry about it, future generations will suffer. Why it's important? The Shigir idol changed archaeology because it shows we struggle to date wood, let alone stone. The barrels nearby tell us that someone died there, but they do not identify the builders themselves. That the complex symbolic thinking existed very early, and that art didn't need cities or writing systems to exist. That prehistoric cultures were far more sophisticated, complex, and deeply human than we ever allowed them to be in our simplified timelines, suggesting that history is less a straight line of progress and more a fragmented mirror in which we keep rediscovering not the beginning of civilization, but the recurring depth of ourselves. To everyone watching my videos, thank you from the bottom of my caffeine-powered soul. Every view, like, comment and accidental click while falling asleep on your phone means the world to me. And to absolute legends, the fearless warriors who actually press the follow button, your bravery will be studied by historians for generations. Seriously though, I'm incredibly grateful for this amazing community. You people make creating videos so much fun. Now help me out, what videos do you want to see next? Drop your wildest, funniest, smartest or weirdest ideas in the comments below. And if you need something good to read between my masterpieces of cinema, check out my books too. Your support keeps this channel alive, slightly chaotic and running almost entirely on passion and questionable decisions. Signing off, c.g.lurid, keeping things lurid since forever.